first dignitary whom I'm going to be inviting shortly to speak to us, Mr. S.M. Vijayanand, a 1981 batch IAS officer. Mr. Vijayanand passed his MA English with first rank from the University of Kerala and cleared his civil services examination, securing 7th rank. During his 11 years as Secretary Local Civil Government, Mr. Vijayanand played a key role in the devolution of funds, powers and personnel to the local government institutions. Yesterday, Mr. Vijayanand, we were talking about, Pranji was saying, funds, function and functionary. And Mr. Vijayanand has actually shown us how this can be achieved beautifully in Kerala. He was a member secretary of the Senate Committee on Democratic Decentralization, and he served as member of the 2nd and 4th Finance Commissions of Kerala and the 3rd Administrative Reforms Panel of the state. Now, this is sounding a very official introduction, but I want to share something different, which you will love to hear about Mr. Vijayanand. I was reading about him, and I wanted to share 2 stories. First story, Mr. Vijayanand, the young Mr. Vijayanand, with his father, who was working in the AG's office. Mr. Vijayanand's father was an auditor. One day they go into the police station, and the sub-inspector is sitting on the table. Lots of people in the police station. They wanted to file a complaint. They wanted to actually petition. They wanted to speak to the sub-inspector. Mr. Vijayanand's father placed his hand on the sub-inspector's table, and the sub-inspector actually rebuked him. The young Mr. Vijayanand then at that very point, swore to himself that should he one day become a civil servant, he will provide respect to each and everybody. He wanted, at that moment he committed that he is going to respect each and every one. First story. Second story, they had built a house, and the neighbor's house actually was trying to intrude and came very close to their compound wall. Mr. Vijayanand actually went and complained to the authorities, and he saw that a big sheaf of currency was being passed to the person who actually was supposed to, control and actually, take action against the defaulter. At that moment, Mr. Vijayanand swore that again, should he one day become a bureaucrat and civil servant, he will dedicate his life to fight against corruption. Okay, very 2 interesting anecdotes about Mr. Vijayanand. But the amount of work he has done for Panchayat development, he is amongst the few authorities of Panchayat development, of building the Panchayat institution in the country. Mr. Vijayanand, welcome, sir. The stage is yours.
Introduction. Hope it has not raised expectations. Then my talk would be a failure. I've been in Panchayat Raj for 22 years. Exactly. Very actively. Not just been. And it's extremely rare, I don't know if it will be repeated, for a bureaucrat to get a tenure of 11 years in one department from the day the cabinet note is being prepared up to it's not a project, it's a whole thing reaching a certain stage. So I was quite lucky in that. So I thought, but then I must commend you on that. In all my 22 years, I've attended, I don't know, the number of workshops on Panchayat Raj. Even now, after retirement, I keep attending. Nobody has used the word beauty of Panchayat Raj. To vast number of people, Panchayat Raj was ugly, corrupt, casteist, incapable. That is the mudra of Panchayat Raj. Everybody, almost all persons, even persons in charge of Panchayat Raj. So it's the first time that the word beauty is used linked to Panchayat Raj. So let me compliment you on that. When India became independent, several tragedies took place. One tragedy was the unfortunate debate between Gandhiji and Ambedkar on panchayats. Whether panchayats are casteist cesspools, sinks of corruption. Then Ambedkar was right. Gandhiji was also right. Had we brought them together, I have only one proposition. Who are the freedom fighters of India? I was born in 57. I have interacted with some freedom fighters. You can't imagine such people would have existed anyway. We can't. We are all professionals. They just didn't want anything in life. They wanted freedom of India. All kinds of people, students, teachers, lawyers, farmers, poor people. They all went and fought for freedom, sacrificed everything, came back, and were very happy. If they had become the Sarpanjas in 1947, India would have been different. Now, of course, history, we are now looking too much at history, trying to rewrite it, so it's very dangerous. I'll not venture into that, but I can't help thinking. I strongly believe in Gandhian ideology. And I believe both were right. I've seen the worst of casteism. So both were right, but anyway, we missed the opportunity. We kept on missing opportunities. So in India, Panchayat Raj is a tale, continuous tale, call it tragic or not, of missed opportunities. Then came the realization in N50s that we will have the first time Panchayat Raj coming into political discourse at the national level with Balwant Rai Mehta Committee in the late 50s. Then we get into the Chinese war. Then we get into the war with Pakistan and terrible famine. So that whole national attention turned to the Green Revolution. Food safety is more important than anything else. So we forgot about Panchayats and we succeeded in our Green Revolution. Then in the 70s, when the Janata government came to power with their own Gandhian socialist inclinations, they tried to revive Panchayat Raj. They collapsed. Again, it became a national discourse during Rajiv Gandhi's time, and a constitutional amendment came. But again, the amendment initially from 93 didn't yield the results. At that time, I'm privy to some conversation. Tamil Nadu is one government which has its own strong identity vis-a-vis the center. Even they, at that point of time, the officers told the CM, if you don't implement the constitution, we could be dismissed. So there was such fear in all states, but nobody tried to implement the 73rd Amendment, and it is forgotten. Then came, in 2004, a common minimum program, surprisingly most of which got implemented except Panchayat Raj. Right to information, Forest Rights Act, Narega, all of them got, right to education got implemented, but Panchayat Raj was one of the key items which was nobody tried to implement it. 2005, Narega. Narega has given a lot of resources, but I don't think Panchayats own Narega in most parts of India. So it's now what is the importance of Panchayat Raj? First of all, we all swear by constitution. We over-exist a constitution. Panchayat Raj is a constitutional necessity. So, whether we like it or not, it is there. For what? For economic development and social justice. I knew the persons who wrote those things. Economic development we all understand. But what is social justice? Much more wider. Only place where the word social justice is used in the Indian Constitution, I'll be very curious how Supreme Court would interpret the term social justice. So panchayats are there for economic development and social justice, preparing plans. So plan, economic development, social justice is a constitutional thing. And my argument I go and take almost annual lectures to the officer trainees of the Indian Administrative Service in Mussoorie. One class which falls totally flat is the class on Panchayat Raj. The youngsters are not interested in Panchayat Raj. Out of respect for a senior, they don't tick me off and give me some satisfactory grading. Nobody is convinced. Why? But then it used to fall flat. Till 2 years ago, even now it falls flat. But till 2 years ago, I discovered, about 4 or 5 years ago, a convincing argument. There is no developed country in the world without an elected local government. Can anyone of you name it? Even China. Democracy, it is there. So you cannot function. It's almost axiomatic without an elected local government. But unfortunately, nobody associates panchayats with local governments. Panchayats are local governments and the constitution states so. Even otherwise, they are structured. So that part is very important. We all now talk of the democratization debate. And all over the world, democracy seems to be on the decline, first time after World War II. But Panchayat provides the ideal space for democracy. Participatory democracy, deliberative democracy. And recently I read a word called communicative democracy. What is communicative democracy? Deliberative, you discuss, debate, vote, and that's it. Participatory, you participate. And participatory democracy is more of a communicative democracy. You communicate, you discuss, try to solve, negotiate, come to a consensus, or even you agree to differ. That is how Gram Sabha is supposed to function. That's an arena of communicative there. And sheer number, more than 3 million plus elected representatives, out of which nearly 13.5 to 14 lakh are women. So that's a huge number. They alone. Lot of us don't respect these elected representatives. Take the weakest state, take the weakest Panchayat, diarize a day in the life of an elected woman Panchayat member. Then you will realize what these people are doing. It's not blank. You can't write it. Any day, as Secretary Panchayat Raj in Government of India, I couldn't interact with many of them, but I could get a sense of what is happening. They are all working, so there is some hope. So then we all talk of governance and not government. Which is a natural entity of governance? A Panchayat. Which is all discussion and debate. It's not about government in that sense. So it's a governance entity. Then power to the people. Even if it's the most corrupt Panchayat, people do get some power if the Panchayat functions well. Direct interaction. Then Ambedkar's sphere. A lot of people, even now, the women are not really powerful even if they get elected. The SCs are not very powerful. PISA is not working in scheduled areas. We have to concede that. But still, people can't be dumb forever. At the Panchayat level, everybody sees how the levers of power are getting lifted and pushed. And after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you will also realize what power you have. It's a game of numbers. And you can decide. Nobody, as long as voting is secret, and these reservations are there for women, SC, ST, people will realize, and my feeling is, optimism is, they can come to a kind of a agreement, consensus on how we share. So that possibility is there. So I have, with some very powerful Dalit organizations, I have been arguing that there's a greater chance of your empowerment through Panchayat Raj because you see how power is being used. You can't see it at the state level, let alone at the national level. A lot of talk of corruption in Panchayats. In Kerala, I did a study, but I couldn't formally call it a corruption study. I compared the cost of a work done by the Public Works Department and a cost of a work done by a Panchayat using the very same specifications. A road, a building. These are two typical examples. This was sometime in 2003-04. And I found that the Panchayat work cost 10 to 40% less than the PWD work. So, which means leakage is less. Resources get invested. Even then, I must tell you, corruption in Panchayats, even in Kerala, is much more than comfort. And it's increasing. When we started People's Plan in 96, corruption plummeted. Then it has been gradually creeping, but it is less than what is at the state level, and maybe it's less than what is at the national level. But one big question, a moral dilemma, which is more dangerous? Corruption at the national level, the national security could be compromised, or corruption at the lower level. There's only one answer. Corruption at the lower level is much more dangerous because democracy gets killed at the roots. The branches can rot and you can lop them off, but if democracy gets destroyed at the roots, people will lose faith in everything. So there should be much more attack of corruption at the local level. But then corruption at the Panchayat is visible and known. Other corruptions are not known. You will never know. You may feel something has gone wrong, but you'll never has anybody found out this was the kind of corruption in any deal at any level. But in Panchayat, actually know. But unfortunately, it's a little more crude, haggling, so corruption at Panchayat cannot be tolerated. I take my word, it is less than corruption at other levels. And you can try it out. Any organizations can either intuitively or actually empirically try to verify it. Then of course Panchayats have multiple roles we know: political, governance, which I mentioned, administration, development, welfare, regulation, alternative dispute redressal, and a lot of things. And Panchayats have the capacity to develop replicable models, which I've seen only Panchayats develop. Because they see, I like the word holistic thing. We all see sectorally. Agriculture goes up like this goes up like that. But Panchayats see things as a problem. Talk to any Panchayat president. There must be some here. They see a problem. They don't see it as this department's work, that department's work. So there is some hope in Panchayat perceiving a problem. They may not have the capacity to do that. Mobilization, feedback, outreach, spotlighting problems. I've mentioned all this. Then, which we realized in Kerala, at one point of time, because of sheer economic crisis, a chief minister, a government thought whether powers could be withdrawn. But what was the argument which made the government not take a decision in that light? Panchayats provide diffuse economic stimulus. Why was Narega not withdrawn? I was in Government of India in Rural Development in 2014. Everybody thought that Narega would be withdrawn. Why it was not? In spite of all its deficiencies, it provided money in different parts of India, in the poorest districts, and there was some local economic stimulus. In 2014 budget, the big industrialists, including Maruti, were shocked when they represented to the finance minister, toned down Narega because we are not getting workers, which is a lie. Do you think Narega gave 30 days work to some few crore workers? So the big industry is saying that we are not getting workers because of Narega. In 2015, brakes had been applied on Narega and rural purchasing power came down. The very same industrialist groups met the next government's finance minister and said, rev up Narega because purchasing power has come down in rural areas. Us seeing both. So we all know what is economics and what is development in a larger sense. So this diffuse economic stimulus is provided by Panchayat because money goes to every corner based on a formula. There is a big service of the 14th Finance Commission. 2 lakh crore in 5 years. During the same period, Narega would be little more than 2 lakh crore. So 4 lakh crore going to 2 lakh 48,000 Panchayats in India, 48,000 odd Panchayats, over a period of 5 years from 15 to 20 is a resource which we never thought would ever be given. Then they have a preference for cost-effective solutions. They don't have money. So they will not splash in costly solutions which state departments are interested in. So almost by definition, Panchayats want to spend less and achieve more. So there is an efficiency angle in their spending, natural. Then Panchayats do accept appropriate technologies. In Kerala, only Panchayats build Baker buildings. The PWD refuses because Panchayats want to save some money for better buildings. So they are open to alternative technologies of all kind, whether it be ZBNF or Baker technology or even mud technology. And for that reason, their plans are real. You can't tell something to the people and then later say that it didn't happen. You have to be very precise. And improvement or failure is much more real at the Panchayat level. At the national level, you can debate whether you had 7% growth or 7.2% growth or 6.5. Nobody, even we will not understand. But at the Panchayat level, we know you can't say that this has been done, agricultural production has increased, incomes have increased, you can't tell a lie. It's much more, has to be realistic. You can ask people who are here. And then it's a last link in service delivery. We all cry that India's service delivery is not good. And Panchayats can provide the last link because they are the link between the people and the institution. Then of course something which a lot of people have been telling me, at one point of time even Prime Minister made the point. Panchayats can provide low cost or no cost development. Just by working with people. Almost all of you are from, I shouldn't use the word NGO, no? So, so development accelerators. You all know that much can be achieved without money. Just by bringing technology, getting services delivered, and all the kinds of things, which only Panchayats can do. The so-called, we called it costless development as part of GPDP. Then there are criticisms. I mentioned those criticisms, but let's not get into it. Capacity. We all blame Panchayats don't have capacity. They don't have capacity. Why? What is the capacity of an elected cabinet minister? The secretary. The whole system. That is how the parliamentary democracy system is designed. So you don't provide any capacity and expect the capacity to reside in an elected leader. I don't think it's a correct way of doing it. So let's not forget all those kind of things. But there are some problems. One problem is it's become, particularly in central India, it is a Mukhya-centered, the Sarpanch-centered, the Pradhan-centered. But Panchayat is supposed to be a committee. It doesn't have ruling or opposition party as per law. But it has become, and then women members are not given the central role. But I must tell you, in India, there is no understanding of local government as a concept. Judiciary doesn't understand. The bureaucracy doesn't understand. The newspapers don't understand. They confuse this still with Panchayats. Even top newspapers, particularly the English newspapers. So, that understanding of Panchayats, even statistics, do you know there is no Panchayat statistics? All our statistics are based on villages. And villages have they are not entities, governance entities. So you go to census village, revenue village. They were the old British entities for revenue collection. So these are some of the issues. So, a lot of serious issues, but can we do something? I think we can do certain things. Let me come to that. One, working with the Panchayats. I said, my endeavor during my 22 years in Panchayat Raj has been trying to persuade NGOs to work with Panchayats. Very few NGOs take the bite because people are slightly scared of Panchayats. Not slightly, considerably scared of Panchayats. I don't know the reason. Everybody is happy working with self-help groups. And I am a great supporter of self-help groups, and I was chairperson of the executive committee of Kudumbashree, again for 11 years. From the day one Kudumbashree was inaugurated by Prime Minister till I left in 2011. But can they work together? That's a big challenge I throw to you. SHGs and Panchayats can work together, and my proposition is they complement each other. If they are parallel, the gains of democracy will cancel itself out, themselves out. If they work together, they could be synergy. It's a proposition. And evidence is there in Kerala, how the Kudumbashree works with Panchayats. I don't have time to explain the dynamics of that partnership. Since most of you would be working with SHGs, try to have a working relationship with Panchayat. The SHGs will not be under the Panchayat. They are independent, autonomous. Direct democracy, or as I mentioned, this communicative democracy within SHGs. Panchayats are local governments, but they will work. Right from Gram Sabha strengthening, accountability, service agency, the SHGs can function, provide a whole lot of functions for the Panchayat. So that's one way, one important entry point for working with Panchayats. Then the whole concept of beacon Panchayats, which is, the idea was so well outlined by Mr. Arun. I was in Delhi when we tried to do this livelihood program, livelihood mission. For 2 years, we couldn't achieve anything. Then suddenly it hit upon some officers that we will develop a resource block, the beacon. And from the block, it will radiate to other blocks. And we calculated in 7.5 years, the whole of the country can be reached. Precise calculation. This will get this thing, and all calculated in years, months, everything, not a general idea. I think such a thing will work in panchayats with these kind of things. So a beacon is developed. You can latch onto a beacon, develop a beacon. And from my experience, believe me, it's not validated by any empirical evidence. 1/3 of the panchayats are good. 1/3 of the panchayats are average. And 1/3 are below average. And 1/3 of the 1/3 below average would be hell. And 1/3 of the 1/3 top would be better than the best district collector. My 15 years of observation in Kerala gave me this. So I tested this every state in the country. After discussing with young collectors and all that, they also say, sir, more or less in my state also, this rule of 1/3 looks correct. So initially we will latch on to the 1/3 of the 1/3 of the top. Develop the model and go down. It's doable. But it's time consuming. You can't suddenly go and do this, because panchayats, I've been telling my colleagues in different this thing, may not be good project entities. For project efficiency, panchayats are not the ideal. But for good governance and genuine democracy, they are a must. So patience and perseverance is very critical when you work with panchayats. It's very, very critical. So it's my strong appeal to you that you should work with panchayats. And what did Kerala gain? I think that will be my last main point with panchayats. Minimum needs infrastructure, meaning roads, electricity, water supply, sanitation, houses. It has improved in a quantum way. Public service infrastructure. For the first time in the history of Kerala, in the recent history of Kerala, more students have started going to government schools from private schools. It never happened. And the main reason is the panchayat improving infrastructure. If they start improving the quality of teaching, which some panchayats have already tried, it will be much more important. Then something which we never realized in theory or practice, it just came like that, what I call care and compassion. Palliative care. You all know what is palliative care? When death is certain, make the remaining life livable. And do you know which country has the worst quality of death? They call it quality of death. Very macabre term. India. And the best quality of death is supposed to be UK. There have been some studies ranking. So at that time, about 10 years back, we started working on palliative care. It's not as simple, it cannot be delivered simply like that. And Kerala Panchayats, Kudumbashree, NGOs in a partnership took it up. And I was very surprised in 2009 when The Economist, in a full-page article criticizing India for a very bad quality of death, said, in an unlikely scenario of a South Indian state of Kerala, we have a model which could be used by third world countries. So the Panchayat did develop it. And Mr. Rajiv is there? Yes, he's there. He can tell you how palliative care is done. It brings out the best in people. And I think almost all the panchayats are doing it. At least 2/3 of the panchayats are doing it very well. Then working with Kudumbashree, the poorest of the poor. About 1.5% of the population in Kerala, which in whole of India could be around 5 to 10%, depending on the state. Most of our benefits bypasses, People's Plan also didn't reach them. So they came out of the scheme on poorest of the poor, preparing plans for the family. Some of them, now of course it has become slightly routinized, are outstanding. Then one panchayat president did a survey of his panchayats. And suddenly he realized that children with not learning disabilities, with mental retardation was unusually high. They are never visible. They were in the back rooms, and particularly among the poor. The number was huge in a panchayat. So he took about 30 students and developed a school, an alternative school. He called it BUDS. Now there are 70 BUDS schools in Kerala, all run by panchayats, looking after children with very high degrees of mental retardation. So like that, this are called care and compassion, where India is one of the poorest in the world in terms, we used to call it welfare earlier. And panchayats can do this. It's been proven. They may not do very well in economic development. Kerala's growth rate didn't increase because of panchayats, or agricultural production didn't increase, but care they could deliver. Something in the political thing. These are not vote banks also. So they are able to deliver. And now after our devastating floods, who are the first respondents? You know the term first respondent in a disaster. The panchayat members. Everywhere on TV. Nobody could go there. The panchayat members on their own went and rescued people, organized things without any formal command structure. Even the disaster management structure started working maybe a few hours later or half a day later. But panchayats were there right at the beginning, everywhere, all over Kerala, wherever it happened. So now we have realized, we never thought, in disaster management also, panchayats have a role, and a very important role. Probably it has to be, now I think Kerala Institute of Local Administration has started writing it down. Then we should have a vision for panchayat. Now one panchayat in Kerala is trying to do climate change and panchayat. It's very difficult. But those of you who are interested in climate change, take a cluster of about 10 to 15,000 population, and a practical methodology is emerging. You can make it carbon neutral. It's possible. Theoretically it is possible. Practically also to some extent. So these are new areas of Panchayat Raj, not just roads, buildings and self-help groups. Now, UN agencies are talking about localizing sustainable development goals. How can you combat inequality or reduce conflict at the panchayat level? Living in harmony with nature, peace. These are all values in the SDGs. We can try out. Very interesting models, new areas, frontier areas, where you can work with some panchayats and probably, believe me, the very difficult panchayats, they perform better. In fact, I feel Panchayat Raj has much greater scope in central India than Kerala. Because the need is there, the community is there, and some kind of catalytic thing is very, very useful. Don't try to create or push for decentralization. It's political. I don't think it can be achieved. But then a strategy I would advocate is, as is, where is Panchayat Raj? You go to the weakest state with weakest Panchayat Raj, Bihar is supposed to have one of the weakest panchayats. Read the state, not law, the government orders issued in Bihar. Just the government orders, which have been formally given after approval by the executive, not the law. Law is very generic. And try to translate that into reality. Supervising village education committees is nothing. But that can become a very powerful tool of empowering the panchayat. Supervising Anganwadis is there all over India. Supervising PDS. So vague powers have been given to panchayats. But actualizing that power in letter and spirit, you don't go outside the letter, but add spirit to the letter. Much can be achieved. So let's not fight with states to give more powers. So there's a theory of virtuous circle. Hoping that panchayats perform, then politicians want to show results. We hope that they may give some more money to panchayats. So GPDP offers a huge potential. Dr. Reddy will now speak about the 100 clusters. Coming from Kerala, I can use the word Mao's 100 flowers and 100 thoughts. It has huge potential, huge potential. If we realize that, if you could all latch on to one cluster, as per your competency, as per your desire, as per your preference, doing whatever activity you are doing in whichever part of India, is a great experiment. Because it's not 100 cluster of GPDP. It is a million action research projects going on together. One could be behavioral, one could be developmental, one could be care. It could be anything. So I think don't think it's a Sarkari project. I'm a retired person. Of course, I associate myself with NARD and PR, but it has huge potential. Discuss it, threadbare, and find out how you can do. You don't have to give money, you don't have to add to your work, change your priority, but you can latch on, and probably that is something that's my, and then there is something called soft devolution. What is soft devolution? Respect a panchayat as a panchayat. A young sub-collector, 24-year-old, straight out of Missouri, how does he get the confidence? Or he or she get the confidence? Because people respect you are the sub-collector. But we don't respect a sarpanch. We don't. Would any BDO, let alone a collector, discuss with the panchayat as a chief secretary discusses with secretaries on one-to-one basis? No. We don't. So forget all the things I said. Respect a panchayat as a panchayat president. He or she may perform. Don't give any powers, don't give any capacity. Yes, you are the panchayat president. That is a soft devolution kind of argument we have. So do the networking, and I like the term connecting the dots. So do the networking, and by networking, and create a platform for supporting panchayats. Don't have a prefixed agenda. Work with panchayats and share what you are doing with panchayats. That is what is meant by a platform. Not that I will do this for panchayat, I will do so. Do something and it will be great. So you were talking about how to get certain things done and identify. Kerala tried with what's called a Green Kerala Express. It was a social reality show featuring panchayats. Everybody laughed at that idea. I was a secretary then. Even I laughed at the idea in the beginning. There's a very bright Doordarshan fellow. Do you know Doordarshan ratings went up? And they showed episodes, and all the episodes were so interesting. And taken very, very professionally. So a panchayat president will come, and this is what I try to do. Then immediately somebody goes cycling to the panchayat, gets some shots, and then people will start discussing, debating, and it's so beautifully done that finally we gave an award of 1 crore. There were so many things, people's ratings, everything, and finally that which got the best in Green Kerala Express. I think it was done in 2009 or 10, and they are all case studies in performance. If some researcher wants to analyze this, what makes a good panchayat president, you can study from the Green Kerala Express. So thanks for calling me. Thanks for the nice words. And my offer is, anybody who wants my help is available free of cost to any NGO which is this thing. As I told you, because of this unusual experience which God has given me, now after retirement I am willing to give it to anybody. For whatever it's worth, I understand panchayats fairly well. Thank you.